No, so this one's actually really interesting, honestly, and anyone that's watching this and is curious as to what STI is, different type of STI, definitely different type of STI.
Hey guys, it's Lola here and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your very first time watching a video of mine. Today we're going to be doing the second in a series about working in HR, and we're going to be focused on learning and development, and I've got my friend Sarah here who's going to be talking a little bit about that. So if you're interested in learning about what it's like to work in HR and specifically learning and development, stick around. You're fine. Everything to drink and...
Yeah, I'm good, trust me.
Sarah, thank you very much for joining me today and hopefully sharing some gems about your career. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll go into kind of how you got into doing it.
Okay, cool. So my name is Sarah. I am currently a learning and leadership partner at a media company. And I've been in that role for, 6 months now. So literally joined about 2 weeks before lockdown. So it's been an interesting ride. So kind of, I look at the learning leadership cycle from end to end. So starting from, when someone first comes into the business, we have the induction, but then also kind of the leadership initiatives and the learning initiatives that really help someone get from A to B. I like to think of it as like a train. So you're at A, you want to get to C, how do you get to B? We're the people that help you do that. So it's really ad hoc. It could be anything from your typical e-learning modules to looking at something bespoke for a particular department. It really varies, so always exciting and fun to do that.
Perfect. Okay, so how did you get into kind of learning and development in general? And if you just maybe give us a bit of a chronology of your work history. And this is particularly, for me, quite interesting in learning and development, because when you look at other parts of HR, usually people start kind of the HR assistant, go to HR advisor. But I found that in L&D, being, I guess, very, very, very specialised, it doesn't necessarily always happen in that way. So why don't you tell us how you got into L&D?
So, I completely agree with you. My route into L&D was really unconventional. So I actually studied, I'm going to try and give you somewhat brief synopsis of it because it can be quite a long story, but I studied business finance actually at university. But just before I went to university, I was given the opportunity to do an internship at an investment bank. Okay. And they actually placed me in HR, and this was based on personality. So I was like, I want to be a big trader. I want to make money. As you will do. But they placed me in HR based on personality, and I was placed in the graduate recruitment team. And over that course of that month, it pretty much changed my life. And I was convinced, going to university, I no longer wanted to do anything with finance. I wanted to go into HR. So I studied my degree, graduated, but I was actually applying for HR graduate roles.
What did you say you studied?
Business finance.
Okay.
So it was completely...
I studied accounting and finance.
Yeah. So it was, I think the transferable skills helped, but it was very, very different. So I then kind of went into customer service, and that kind of helped with the ability to be able to assess people's needs. But I actually then studied my CIPD to really get an understanding of what it is I wanted to do. And in that...
When you studied CIPD, is there a, I might be wrong, is there an L&D, specific L&D track, or did you do the generalist?
So I did the generalist one, but I think when I studied it, there was an opportunity, there was like a particular module where you could focus on L&D, or it was like it looked into the other areas. So you had L&D, you had reward as well. And just kind of looked at that as well. But it was predominantly generalist, which was really useful for me. So I could get like a real understanding of what HR does.
And the wider infrastructure that you would be working in.
For me, I've kind of focused on getting the more vocational qualifications. So I've just recently done the SDI. It's kind of looking at behaviours. So it's
like a
psychometric.
Yeah, psychometric one where it says what your traits are.
Yeah.
I always end up with whichever one is right.
No, so this one's actually really interesting, honestly, and anyone that's watching this and is curious as to what STI is, different type of STI. Definitely doing WS, yeah. No, I can send details to Lola and she can link
You
it.
spoke about doing CIPD and then you got your first L&D role. What was that role? I mean, what did you have to do?
My first L&D role, I was an L&D coordinator. It was very much a starter role in terms of L&D, and I feel like I learned a lot of that organisational, or the organisational elements to L&D around that. So when people think of L&D, quite traditionally they think of training, and L&D is so much more than that. But I definitely say if you want to get your chops in L&D, you need to be really, really good at being able to pull a training session together, because that's where it all comes to life. And there was real opportunity to do that there. So, from working on lunch and learn sessions to make sure that people were taking on board some of the new initiatives, bringing in a new learning management system, working on working actually with some of our overseas branches and like partners and brands, to be able to pull some of the quantitative data together around who work for us and really be able to assess actually what are the potential needs that we'll need in the business in the future.
A lot of, I think, L&D is more forward-looking. Where do we need to be and what do we need to do now so that in X amount of time we are able to continue to operate in the right way?
It's so funny you say that, because I think quite often, and I've been in the industry for 7 years, the tide is only recently turned, because the way you were saying, you kind of were made aware that you felt like, or you were, were lost making at the point where you were studying. Quite a lot of businesses always felt that L&D was loss making, because essentially L&D don't necessarily contribute to the bottom line in the most quantitative way. So
they don't do sales.
They don't do sales, exactly. So they're not the ones making the sales, but they do in the sense of the value that they add to that training, to that initiative. And so it's interesting you were saying that it's talking about being kind of a loss-making entity, because I think a lot of companies used to see L&D like that, and then now just realising
I think it's the same with HR more broadly. The worst thing people say to me is that HR is a cost centre, and I hate that, because it's just somewhere that holds costs. It's like there's so much value that comes out of HR in different ways, and I think L&D is probably one of the ones where it's easiest to see the return, because there were loads of studies, and I love reading like studies and research around the impact that L&D has had, like quantifying. Like people used to make X sales, then we put them through the leadership development, and then now they make 2X sales. So you can see it. I guess for those who are not so familiar with L&D, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? So we've spoken about kind of when you're more junior, looking at putting together training sessions.
Yeah.
But as you kind of move up the career ladder within L&D, what does the day-to-day stuff look like?
I think so. There are kind of two elements to it. I would say one is around programs. So not just kind of that traditional where are you, what do you need to be trained on, but actually in terms of like your e-learning, in terms of a team, their actual development needs, kind of actually analysing that and creating something bespoke for them, or creating a program. You quite often find yourself looking at end to end. So from the design and actually creating that, to delivering it, to looking at the aftermath as well. Like that, I would say is kind of a big piece as you're growing up in.
So you're designing a lot of both training sessions, but also wider programs which slot together for a sort of curriculum.
Yeah, it's a curriculum essentially, and it's a curriculum that can be done by e-learning, but it's a curriculum that also. So I've worked on training programs for opening restaurants. I've worked on training programs that you would need to complete online in order for you to be able to be qualified for a leadership program.
Yeah.
So it very much, it's kind of looking at that 70-20-10.
What's the 70-20-10?
Sorry, so 70-20-10 is basically like it's a very traditional training module, and it's basically looking at how people learn. So 70% is on the job. So it's pretty much on the job. You will take on the majority of your training, and that's why, like you said, the other aspects of HR, like performance management, making sure that you are being rewarded correctly, making sure that people are happy in their roles, that kind of ER stuff. is really, really important, because if you're meant to be learning on your role, if you're meant to be picking up certain skill sets in order for you to progress to the next level, you need to make sure all the kind of foundation is in place in order for you to be able to get that. So 7% on the job. 20% is quite vocational, so it might be like specific training, so coaching or secondments, or really kind of focusing on that. And that's probably where when you think about development on or development in HR, in L&D, in terms of like progression, and when you become more senior, that's where kind of that starts.
You start thinking less about training, you start thinking more about development more broadly.
Yeah, so the 10% is literally training, like the most traditional type of training.
Classroom online
training.
And my next question is about your interaction as kind of L&D with the wider HR functions.
So I think it is more around, I think it for the most part, it's probably around kind of that underperformance, or the not so much underperformance, but also the training gaps. So where, for example, with the business partners that I work with, quite often they know their teams, they know their heads of, they know what their strengths are, but they also are very good at being able to identify actually where are the challenges. And I think sometimes it takes someone who has a training mentality, or who has that mentality, to kind of look at it from a, what can we do to really, again, encourage people to want to learn more, or to want to try something different, or to want to engage more with their team, just to make sure.
How about promotion? So I know in some businesses it's kind of not so clear how to get promotion, but I find really good businesses, there is like a bit of a pathway to the next step.
That's actually something that I'm working on at the moment. So I'm quite fortunate to kind of work with, I'm quite fortunate to be working on a program that used the apprenticeship levy, which wasn't something that I did previously, even though it should sit within L&D. But in terms of that succession planning, where previously I've kind of looked at it just from this person is high potential, what can we do to help train them? Now it's more around, like you said, that promotion, and actually positioning people, the rising stars, to get to that point. So,
and we spoke a bit about D&I before, but loads of organisations now, probably over the last few years, have invested a little bit in, I was going to say a lot, but lots of haven't invested a lot in kind of diversity training. And what have you been involved in from like kind of helping people to learn or unlearn in the workplace around kind of diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so been quite a lot going on within my particular company. So I am still currently training unconscious bias. So we partnered with an external company to do that. But
I think that's really good that you have. Sometimes it's not, I think we haven't really spoken about it, but you did touch on it a little bit, but sometimes you may be the person to do the training, but a lot of times it's about finding the right people to do the training, and even training them, doing that train the trainer, training them so they're able to train other people. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if you work in L&D, you are going to be the person facilitating or delivering the training. What are the kind of challenges in your role? I guess, what do you like the least about it? What would you get rid of if you could?
So I would say a couple of things, and they're not necessarily negatives. They're just, I guess it's a mindset. So quite often you'll find that people just don't turn up, or they'll come, or they'll make an excuse, and it just makes it, for me, it's really important that if something is being run, that people do, they are kind of encouraged, and to a point that they get to get that full value. So it's just keeping yourself motivated when you find that there is a lot of resistance. And then I would say, when you're like wanting to have a bit more investment or try something different, something new, sometimes you can find that some senior stakeholders are a bit resistant to change. And they're like, well, no, we don't do it like that. This is how we normally do it.
And it's worked for us. If it ain't broke.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And what do you like most about it?
Oh, I love loads of things. So
good stuff.
so I am quite lucky in that I work a lot on the kind of induction side, so I get to work on people's business, and I think that's so important. Like, I've had great inductions, I've had crap inductions, and I think like an induction is pretty much, you know, someone's hopefully super excited to start in a role. That is your way to say welcome, congratulations on your role. You know, this is the way to really introduce the business and actually help them feel at ease. So I love being able to do that. And then I just love being able to see the difference in people and like just the confidence in them when you take them through a program, you take them through development, or you talk to them about, you know, something new that they can try.
In the last one we did, which was we spoke to an employee relations manager, she said some completely different things, but it was all kind of along the same vein of having impact. Like the things that we like most about our jobs, and the same as what I like most about my job. I like seeing the progress of people. I like knowing that what I'm doing really had a positive impact on that person.
Yeah,
and I think in anything you're doing, which is kind of related to people, that's always going to be, if things go right, one of the like really rewarding parts of the role.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone looking to kind of get into L&D in terms of the practical steps they should take, in terms of, you know, how to get in, like what they should be applying for, what they should be learning, what they should be doing with their CV, that sort of stuff?
So first and foremost, I would say your CV is everything. Like, and I'm sure, I've seen, you've done, you do CV checking, you do like the transformation. So it's so important. I think is it 30 seconds or 15 seconds it takes?
I don't know. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time. Exactly.
Exactly.
So I feel, a piece of advice I would definitely give, and this is something that was given to me, is make sure your skills are the transferable skills that you have. If you do not have a background in L&D, make sure that they are relevant to the role that you are applying to, because my entry into L&D wasn't very conventional. I know other people who have gone into L&D from, say, psychology, or have gone into L&D through actually working within a business and then actually kind of developing themselves.
So they might have been like the salesperson, and then you're really good at being a salesperson, but actually you don't want to be a salesperson anymore, or you would be a bigger benefit teaching other people how to be as great a salesperson as you, and then you go into being a trainer, and then maybe you branch out into wider L&D. I've seen that a lot as well.
But your CV needs to be able to kind of show that. So I think that's really, really important. Then I would say your communicative skills are going to be key as well, because when you are working at L&D, you're required to speak to a whole bunch of people within any business, because, for example, something as simple as organising a training session, you are required to reach out to this person, or, this part of your team haven't applied, this part of your team haven't. You need to be able to manage stakeholders, you need to be able to push back when you need to be able to know how to escalate, and that's all around that communication. So making sure that you've had that experience and you're confident in it, super, super important. I'm constantly asking questions. I'm always asking questions. Don't forget to ask questions. Never be afraid to ask questions. Like, if you don't, please do, and if you do, keep on doing it, because that the L&D for L&D is L&D. So that's how you end up developing yourself as well.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I'm sure we're going to benefit lots from what you've shared. Is there anything you want to share, you want to plug?
No, I would say, if you want to message me, feel free to do so.
I'll link Sarah's details below.
Yeah, so feel free to message me. I'm always open to conversations. If you have any questions, if you've got any thoughts that you want to kind of float with someone, I love it. So feel free to come through. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share it with your mates. And stick around. The next video we're going to have in the series is one around diversity and inclusion. So I'll be speaking to somebody who works within D&I, within HR, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her role and giving some advice to those who would like to get into that space. Thank you very much, guys.
Hello.
Bye.